Yeah, but we talked about this before at a stage, like, and sometimes it's to do with like the people we've had on the podcast before. They haven't had a very linear life experience where they've grown up in their city and they've went to the local school, went to the local university, if even, and worked at the nearest office. Like we had Rich on, and obviously he worked over in Lebanon. He's seen different currencies, black market currencies, and things like this. And then we had on Simon Johnson, who I think you might know from Northwest or Northern Ireland Bitcoin meetup, and he has an extensive background. He was out in Russia and things like this as well before. So, and he's got a lot of different careers essentially through his life. So you kind of get that experience, I think, life experience. So I don't think you can pinpoint it specifically. I think it's a bit of what you're saying, Charlie, probably nature, curiosity and things like that, but also maybe what you've been exposed to, up until this point, because it's a tough gig, and trying to, if you want, for want of a better phrase or a more mainstream phrase, orange pill people, it's tough. Like you can bash your head off the wall.
Yeah.
Um, in the face speaking to people. But yeah, I don't know what the characteristic would be.
Oh, you're dead right there, Chris. Because all of the Bitcoin, like I'm in a town right now, Berlin, and there's over 15, 16, 17 Bitcoiners living here full time. It's not a big town. So it's very dense and we can use Bitcoin everywhere. Like we don't use a dollar ever while we're in Berlin. And I find the individuals that are coming here, none of them at all have a non-linear path. Everyone has such a unique kind of, unique past that is quite interesting and full. And yeah, but it's
Yeah,
fascinating. It's good to know, like, because ultimately, like, if we want to hyper Bitcoinize the world, I think it's a psychological thing. I think it's all about how people view the world, or what do they take notice of. Like, our attention is the most scarce thing. I think, like, each individual, where they place their attention ultimately depicts who they become. Right? Ultimately, that's what they work on. So figuring out how attention works for people in general, and learning how do we siphon that attention onto Bitcoin and the problem, and then obviously the solution. I think that's one of the biggest breakthroughs that we could go through, but by actually paying attention to how people notice things, right? And I know it's quite general and every individual is different, but I'm sure there are patterns that we can look at that would allow us to then I do a bit of market segmentation of individuals based on their archetypes, and then kind of hit them with whatever would resonate with them, right? Ultimately. So I'm
yeah.
just I'm because I just come from Suriname there. This is very informal way of starting a podcast, by the way, but
The stage
um,
is yours, Charlie. Yeah, but maybe that's how we get into this. Like based on your question, then is maybe even if you want to start back at the start, like why do you think you got it? Like what's your background? Like tell the audience, a bit about you. Like yeah, you've got an interesting background yourself, and was there anything that led you throughout your life that you think that led to Bitcoin?
yeah, I find this question, like a lot of people ask this question. It's like one of the primary questions asked to Bitcoiners. But hindsight is 2020, and looking back, you kind of fill in the gaps of why you notice Bitcoin. So I could be biased in how I look at things. I My background is, well, I suppose context. I was born in Ireland, Irish parents, and I grew up in Spain from the age of 4. So I had to move and adapt to a different environment. My mum's an English teacher, coming from an academic background. My grandfather was a lecturer of Old English, and she found education really important and pushed me in school and stuff like that. My father is a poker player, professional poker player, and now runs tournaments across Ireland and the UK and stuff. So I think he gave me the analytical side of things, and then obviously myself and what I focused on. But I grew up in Spain, really into soccer. You know, tried to get to a high level there, and then the Yao lad, he came second in Barcelona in the European Poker Tour. He won over €1 million, and that allowed me to go to boarding school in Ireland, because I couldn't have that much in Spain. Single mother, and she was an English teacher and 2 kids and stuff. So that completely changed the game for me looking back, and allowed me to go from like a public Spanish school that I would have gone into secondary school there. I don't know if the education would have been too good, and then went to Rockwell and Tip, and that was good for discipline and scheduling and training. Obviously, trained rugby, and that was allowed me to form a decent routine. And I really got into maths from the get go. Really into maths and physics and chemistry, and then did applied maths for leaving cert. And yeah, all my family on my father's side were all businessmen. They all, most of them, all the uncles own a business, and I was really into science, so I wanted to be able to merge science, maths, business somehow. And I could see doing the CAO is huge for Ireland. Leaving cert is like a very key moment, I feel, for a lot of Irish people. Um, so that's the Republic of Ireland equivalent for the A levels. Like, just like, you choose what course you want to do. So I said I'd do something that's in between maths and business, and actuary kind of popped out. So I went for it, and I was just like, aim for the stars, and yeah, end up, I don't know the saying, but you end up on the moon or something. And but I just about scraped through, like, got the just about scraped through the points. And I was trying to get a scholarship for the United States through soccer at the time, and I got a few half scholarships offers. But then when I got the results in and I managed to get the spot for actuary, I said I'd focus in and go to UCD, and then went into actuary, and that was an incredible experience. Got to go from boarding school, which I found a bit tough, coming from Spain and trying to integrate. And I came from a completely different background to a lot of the people who have had generational wealth and big businesses and stuff like that, to then university, where my intellectual curiosity was satiated, and got to meet some very curious and smart, like, basically autistic individuals. And no, like, and I seem to get on really well with them. We formed a really good group, and yeah, going deep into mathematics and numbers and formula and understanding numbers and functions, calculus, and uh, proven theorems really allowed me to think from first principles, I believe. And during, I stayed with my auntie in Dublin, and a really nice place in Dublin. So that was a really stable part of my life. Like, I never really grew up in a nuclear family, but that was like the closest thing to a nuclear family that I had, was staying with my auntie and uncle and my cousins, and they really treated me well, and that allowed me to focus on studies and getting honors in actuary. And through a connection of my uncle, he managed to help me get a good internship at PwC. So that was great for the self-esteem and your own opinion of yourself and whatnot, and allowed me to then go in and give it a good shot now at PwC, and I did a good internship. But at the time, I was looking around me, and I was always handling money from secondary school. Like, my father never gave me, well, he gave me change, but something got to a stage where he'd give me the leftovers from his festivals, like merchandise, and he'd say, you need to sell that now, and that'll get you enough cash to come back then at the end of the week. And that entrepreneurial mindset was always in me. I was curious as to investing. I realized that the wealthiest people in the world were investors, and, well, okay, what are they invested in? And then I was like, okay, I want some investment that lasts a long time. I was infatuated with long-term investment and value investing. I started looking into value investing and stuff like that. And then at the same time, when I was working as an intern in PwC for actuary, I I got a phone call from my cousin. He was like a total messer, but really smart. And he just got into the crypto space and went in with his father, and he said he'd like made 20K. And he was like, Charlie, you should check this crypto space out. So checked it out. I was really excited. The money, everything was going up, and we formed a group. We formed a group of Irish lads, a few Mullingar boys, and my cousin from Galway, and it was uh, it was an absolute shit show. Like, we formed an Instagram account, got loads of followers, over 100,000 followers. Formed like a private Telegram paid group chat. Money started flowing in, and it was like a recipe for disaster, because it was
Which year was this, Charlie?
2017. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
I was gonna say, let me guess.
and and then I was like, listen, the lads are like, we need to move into the offices. We need to take this seriously. We were doing coin analysis. Like, we were, first of all, analyzing these different coins, trying to analyze the teams behind them, the use cases. And I remember going through it and being like, "Geez, fucking, does this make any sense?" Like, um, but getting really excited because the price fluctuations. And then I said, "Listen, I need to finish my degree." The lads then moved into the offices. I took a step back, and then that all ended in tears with the boys. Like, they all ended up like civil case, people going over, like leaving Australia, like doing a bank run between the team. Oh, it was an absolute, it was a shit show. Um, and I was happy that I decided to finish my degree. And yeah, I did the Camino de Santiago, which was a big pivotal moment for myself at the 800 kilometers walk. That was a time of deep reflection, right? Because you're walking for so long, and you don't have too many distractions. And I was thinking, like, what am I going to do with my life? And I'd gotten, I checked in with PwC. They said, you're welcome to come back and start as an actuarial consultant. This is your path to becoming a full actuary. I saw my results and I got a couple of exemptions, but I still probably had to do another 4 years of professional exams. So I was going into PwC with like this, knowing that I have to sacrifice 4 years of my social life at young age, like early 20s. So I went in to PwC for a year and a half, and I started going deeper and deeper into Bitcoin. I knew there was something there. I remember there was a crossroads for me. I looked at what age I was, how much time I had ahead of myself, and I was like, okay, what do I deeply study here now? And it was in between LLMs and Bitcoin, or crypto at the time, because I hadn't honed down really to Bitcoin solely, even though I was more focused on it. But I wasn't like a pure maximalist or anything like that. And then yeah, after a year and a half of analyzing balance sheets at PwC and seeing what these insurance companies were holding on their balance sheet, I was like, this makes no sense. Why are they holding all these bonds? Why are they lending money out to these governments at 0% interest? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then, you start looking into, okay, central bank reserve requirements. All of these insurance companies have to hold a certain amount of different types of assets, and certain assets are regarded as more risky or not, and you have more penalty points if you hold quote unquote riskier assets. So bonds are the least risky, so you do not have to hold as many reserves by holding bonds. Therefore, it's a very viable solution for all of the insurance companies. And a lot of the questions that I was asking to the people, like the smartest people in PwC, no one had an answer. And I was trying to shill Bitcoin to them, and they mentioned, oh, we should buy a Bitcoin as a team, as the actuarial team in PwC, uh, kind of ripping the piss. But they also kind of respected what I was saying, even though I was only like 21. But then it was time to leave. So I said, no, I don't, they don't inspire me. None of these people in the corporate level inspire me at all. Looked at the managers, and, they slouch backs and pale skin, and um, seemed like, a lot of alcohol was involved, and just to cover up their stress and stuff like that. And I said to myself, nah, I need to get out. I need to get down and to the nitty gritty. I feel like I need to hustle a bit more rather than just being on the straight path of pass exam, salary increase, pass exam, salary increase. Didn't seem very creative. So I had a couple of friends who were going to head off to Australia. Classic, really. And I said, let's do it. So the three Irish lads went to Australia January 2020, went to Melbourne, and our goal was to set up a event business. Like, we wanted to hold parties because you went to so many raves in Dublin. And then that was 3 months before COVID. March came, was in construction, and we were like, we need to get the hell out of the city since this is an infection. We got two cars and booted up to Queensland, worked in the banana farm for 6 months. During the middle of COVID, everybody was freaking out, but we were just there humping bananas. Like, and it was the best time, like best time ever, just being with these young people. And I had gone to the Dublin Buddhist Center before that, and gone to this 7-day retreat with 3 days of silence. And I kept all of that meditation up. So I was sort of what meditation allowed me to do is take a deeper approach of looking at who I was, but also allowed you to take a deeper approach of looking at everything else that was involved in your life. And one thing that I was focused on was obviously Bitcoin, since I was traveling and I had plenty of time on my hands during COVID, and I was keeping fit and stuff like that. So I was sharp. I was drawing parallels with Bitcoin and a lot of the stuff that I was learning through the Buddhist framework, and listened to a lot of Robert Breedlove, and things started to really click. Then I remember one time I was walking in between these two massive trees in North Queensland, barefoot, and I remember thinking of all the currencies that exist in the world, with over 160 currencies, and then I was just thinking of the globe, and I was thinking of all these moving currencies, and then I was like, how are any of these currencies connected? I couldn't figure out how are they connected, right? And I was like, they need some sort of reference point. They're not tied to anything solid. Uh, For some reason, I just felt like this needed to happen. And then I just saw this whole globe with all these different currencies, and bang in the center was Bitcoin. And it was like it was like the connector of all value metrics that humans use across the globe. And it just blew my mind. And I got into a car with my friend and I just started blabbing and blabbing and blabbing and blabbing. I was like, this is it, this is it, this is it. Like, we need to focus in on Bitcoin. This is what we need to do. This. And then from there, it's just been literally nonstop. Just trying to understand the concept of what money is, and an investment in capital. Um, oh yeah, I did another year and a half in Australia, working in plenty of different jobs, mining for gold, silver, and got a van down and started throwing parties. And I know it sounds degenerate, but the parties were a good time to get people together. And during COVID, everything was closed and there's a lot of young people and stuff like that. But eventually I had enough of the partying and went down by myself, traveling for 3 months. And that was the time where I said, yeah, okay, this is I ran over a kangaroo. Like, I ran over a kangaroo, and then I didn't kill it full off, and then I had to get a stick and smash its head. And
Cool.
that was the moment that I was like, I need to get out of Australia. Like, it was like, so I booked a flight to India the next day, and then yeah, I did 3 months in India. I did like a month of just hopping from ashram to ashram, learning about meditation, and then I did a 2 month yoga teacher training before going back to Europe. So I got to Europe and I was like you can imagine, right? The Russia-Ukraine war had just blown up. So that kind of pushed me from India to Europe because my mum was by herself in Spain. I was getting frantic. I just been in Australia basically during COVID, where nothing really made sense, and I'd been going around in bare feet, jumping around to psychedelic trance, and then you arrive back to Europe, and Europe's experienced 2 years of lockdowns. Everybody was depressed, and I was trying to figure out what's going on, like what's happening. I prayed for a bit and said I just want to look for a job within Bitcoin, and I turned the corner and the massive Bitcoin symbols there. I walk into the shop, and this is in Alicante in Spain, and I just say, is there any jobs going? And he's like, yeah, this weekend. So I started a job selling Bitcoin in this shop in Alicante this year. Now, this is 2022, just to give you reference. And then I started seeing the quantity of Russians and Ukrainians that were purchasing and selling Bitcoin, mainly selling Bitcoin for cash because they couldn't access the main banking rails after Russia was taken off of the SWIFT payment rails. And they were charging 8%, and the volume was massive. I was like, what? Why don't I do this? So I asked my dad if he wanted to go halves on a Bitcoin ATM, bought a Bitcoin ATM, threw it into an exchange shop, set up a deal with them where they took a bit of a percentage, and then started selling Bitcoin. And that allowed me to gain a lot of clients. I started selling Bitcoin through the lightning bot on Telegram. That was huge. That was really, really good. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed selling Bitcoin to individuals. They were all Bitcoiners because they were all just trying to save their Bitcoin. None of them were trying to do trading. It was just basically into their Lightning wallet, where they then move it into the self custody. and I started developing relationships with my clients, and went to Bitcoin Prague with a few Spanish guys that I got to know, and obviously the conference in Ireland. I started just going deeper and deeper and trying to explain things, because I was like, the way I can understand Bitcoin is if I try to speak it, message it, say the message, because then it will organize itself in my own mind. I'm sure it's similar to what you guys are doing right now with the podcast, right?
Mhm.
And and then yeah, so I went to a couple of the conferences and asked Rich if he wanted to talk for Ireland, and that was a really good opportunity um, to work with Rich, because he's such a good mind and really well organized, and it's a funny it's a funny concept. Bitcoin conferences, like, there's this new monetary paradigm that is born in 2009, and we are trying to tell the world about this creation that encompasses, like, all of our ability to value things around us, and we're trying to spread the word. I mean, it's just this very funny concept. But I decided that after a while, the banks were closing down on me when I was selling Bitcoin, and I'd a job on the side, which was as an analyst for Standard Life, which is like an insurance company in Ireland. I was a calculations analyst. I was looking over this 200 million euro fund, basically writing these market reports. And it was the worst year for bonds in like 50 years. I think it was an 11% drawdown. And all the pensioners, we're talking 200 million euro of pensioners, and they see their pension drop by 10+%. And they're like, what's going on? Why is my low risk pension dropping by 10% in 1 year? And I was supposed to come up with the answers from these emails. And it just really kind of screwed. I just was like, I felt this is so immoral. Or at least I'm not in the right place. Let's put it that way. I'm not in the right place when I know that Bitcoin is definitely the solution, and I'm working as a calculations analyst for a life insurance company that basically can't invest in Bitcoin. Is investing in bonds for the future purchasing power of most of the pensioners in this country, and they're all lending money to governments at 0%. It just made zero sense. A regulated insurance company that is supposed to look out for the well-being of their future clients, policyholders. And I was like, well, I just need to focus fully on Bitcoin. And that's when I decided to sell all my assets in Europe and come over to El Salvador in July 2023. I had decided that I wanted to come to Berlin because I'd been speaking to a couple of the teachers here at Mi Premier Bitcoin, and they said that there was something starting off in this small town on top of a mountain in the middle of the country. And I knew I didn't want to go to the beach because I knew a lot of the tourists would go there initially, and you'd have different mixes of people, and the prices would be really high. And for someone starting off without any cash flow, it would be better off going somewhere that was a bit rural, and just start something off fresh, because Bitcoin Beach had already had so many people trying to wrestle through, and it's proven to be just an absolute whirlwind since I've arrived. Where we've went from like 15 merchants to now over 160 merchants. And if you ever come to El Salvador and come,
Yeah, so Charlie, just explain a bit more about that. Then, how long are you there? How long have you arrived? What's the merchant business that you're in? I haven't heard the story. I caught up with for the audience. I caught up with Charlie a couple of years ago. We met, and I was actually supposed to go to El Salvador as well. We were chatting a few times on it, and my plans changed then. But yeah, just tell us how long you're there, and yeah, what you've been doing in that time. Yeah, it's fascinating. Even the jump. We'll probably get into why you moved there. You kind of touched on some of it already. Whether it's the a push out of things that were happening in Europe. There's a lot of regulation, as you say. You get kicked out of maybe some of the banking services and things like that, or was the pure draw? Because I know, like, obviously Max Kaiser was doing a lot in the world stage at that stage, and then Bukele became obviously a big name in the Bitcoin space. Touch first on when you started, what you've been doing since there, and what was the main draw to go into El Salvador for you?
sure, sorry for ranting on for an half an hour.
No, you're fine. That's a great story. To be honest, I didn't even know a quarter of that, so it's interesting to hear.
um, yeah, I suppose I couldn't find my space in Ireland. I felt like there was something really off. I kept I kept projecting a few years, knowing the rate at which they had to debase the euro and the dollar, and seeing how many people depended on flat rate payments and how many handouts there was by the government and stuff like that. I could only see destruction, like destruction of capital. I know that sounds a bit um, dramatic, but I just couldn't not see this. And I was like, well, why would I hang around somewhere that I've envisioned it to be destroyed? And when I say destroyed, like, I mean capital. Like, I mean, ultimately, we are just consuming capital. Like, we're consuming more than we're producing, and overregulation just really hampers economic productivity. Like, it prevents us from wanting to sell products, wanting to innovate. It prevents us to want to set up businesses and provide a decent service. So I said, no, I can't be here. So that was a push factor. I was pushed out of Australia because of they started mandating the jabs, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. And you get this odd feeling that there's this dark force behind everything. Um, Not that I can put my finger on it, just that I can sense it. And in Ireland, and I could sense that as well. I thought Ireland was getting hollowed out, really. Just all the multinationals coming in and all the youth leaving to Canada and Australia, and the nightlife and the culture being kind of squashed. Um, so I couldn't really see myself being there. I was there for 8 months working for Standard Life, and it just wasn't clocking in. And Spain was a bit more, I felt like a bit more resilient in some way. I don't know why, like it was a bit more independent to the dark forces. Um, but yeah, I was like, no, I need to start afresh. I'm still young. I can do this. And the pull factor for El Salvador was that Bitcoin was seen as money, so no capital gains tax. So as I was in a business of selling Bitcoin, and I was funneling money through my bank, I needed to take into account the buying and selling Bitcoin and taxes related to that. So I really needed to be in a place where I could use this fluidly. I find that like Bitcoin is a commodity, like it's kind of like fire, in a way that, fire can be, depending on how you use it, it can do amazing things, but you need to actually tinker with it to be able to understand how it works with the elements around, like to cook food or um to burn something that you can um make something out of it. It heats things up, and yeah, it's Bitcoin is energy in that form. And I think in a place where it's seen as money, it's been transacted a lot more. So for these reasons, I wanted to go to El Salvador. I also had the Spanish. I also was doing a lot of videos on the Natural Investor, which is the brand that I came up with in India, trying to explain the nature of money, investment, and capital. And then uh, finally, I was like, yeah, El Salvador is a place where people need education, so I can do more of that. I can speak Spanish. This will be a challenge for me. I feel like it'll allow me to grow within the Bitcoin space. I don't think many people have done this, and yeah, let's go for it. I don't know what's in store for me, but I know it's going to be fun.
And
So
did you go without the kind of like any? So you said you were kind of maybe touching point with a couple of people from El Salvador and get in contact with them. Like, did you go with no job, no, like just on your own to
yeah,
find out?
yeah, pretty much. I was like, I sold a bit of assets and I had Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Not that much, to be honest. And I had to pay back a few guys. But I was really confident. I was confident because I'd gone around Australia. I'd done many different types of jobs. I had the English and Spanish. I can talk to people, and I knew that there was a lot of capital coming into El Salvador. So I was like, well, if I can just provide a service or a good for individuals who hold that capital, then some of that will go my way. And I still had a couple of clients that I was able to sell Bitcoin to around Europe at the same time, just to keep me afloat. But the aim was to Yeah, I'd started the Bitcoin ATM business, and I had a name for it, and I'd registered and made paperwork for AML and KYC, and I'd learned a lot doing that in Europe. So I felt like I can apply this over here, where the regulation is clearer. Bitcoin is money. I had this vision that El Salvador was this kind of is going to attract a ton of Bitcoin, and that was going to be a commodity that we could export technically to the rest of the world, and you could buy high quality goods from different countries, where each country was going to start demanding Bitcoin exponentially more, right, due to its scarce nature and ability to move it around. So I was like, well, I'm obviously going to place myself in a geographical location that's going to attract a huge flow of Bitcoin, provide a service there, be able to attain that Bitcoin, be able to use that Bitcoin to purchase more capital goods and commodities in other countries, including land. Um, uh, yeah, and that'll set me up for when I'm like in 50s or 60s or 70s or whatever. So that was it. Yeah, it just came over and came to Berlin, and I've just been trying to orange belt, just convincing merchants that this is a good thing to accept. I went to this just to give a bit of context to people listening. Berlin is a small mountain town on a volcano. It is basically quite underdeveloped, very rural. There's a small town called Alegria, which is 15-minute drive, and that was a big tourist town. And Berlin was like the ugly cousin, and really wanted to catch up with that, like with the tourism. Obviously, El Salvador went from being the most dangerous country in the world in 2015 to now pretty damn safe. I mean,
And is that your view on it? I know it's statistically, and we all know that governments can maybe change statistics. We look at the CPI and things like that over time. Like, um, is it as safe as they say? Is it as clean as they say? And have you been able to get around as well to like the rest of El Salvador, El Zonte, and things like that, or have you mainly been in Berlin? So yeah, tell us what it's like safety
yeah,
wise. Yeah.
yeah. Well, safety wise, just to give you context, I've my driver's window's been down for the last 2.5 weeks, and I just leave it on the street, and not a thing has been stolen. So that's testament. You might ask, why the fuck don't I fix my window? But it's actually not that many window motor repairers in Berlin. So yeah, it's outrageously safe. You can walk around any time of the night, anywhere in the country. The job the government has done with regards to security is just, it's mind blowing. And everybody can tell you this, any local, they'll all agree. A lot of people will tell you negative things about Nayib and how he's getting ahead of himself and thinks he's brilliant and bringing in Bitcoin and um like yeah, this idea of us and them. And there's a lot of skepticism from governments in general, naturally, since they've had such a turbulent past with politicians. But one thing everyone can agree on is that the safety has really, really, really tightened up, and people can do business again, and they can do business anywhere, and they can sell to any part of the country. And all of these things that maybe we don't take notice of being in Ireland, where you can do business anywhere around the country, you can do business with around the European Union, and that's all fantastic. To think of the contrast for the people who live here, who have been here, and people who have had businesses, and to think of the change of the number of potential customers that they have is just amazing. So the economic activity is just boomed. Um, I arrived in Zante, and I stayed there for 10 days. I stayed with Kiki and James, who are a couple here. And at the time when I first went there, it was like, there's a lot of energy here. There's a lot of energy here. There's a lot of attention focused on El Salvador, and a lot of Bitcoiners coming. Uh, James and Kiki are they're a couple here that had been selling. He was selling pork, and he was friends with Beef Back Better owner, who they were selling beef for Bitcoin, and it was doing really well. And Kiki was doing butter and milk, and they were running an Airbnb. Really, really, really cool Bitcoiners. Stayed at their spot, and me and James then went and looked for a spot for the Bitcoin farmers market, which then has now exploded for the last year and a half. So we found a spot, and we said we'll start the market here. And I remember we went for a proper session after we found the location, and like inaugurating in a way. And yeah, that's been amazing. I mean, the number of vendors now has gone up to like 30, and you get hundreds of people coming through the market every single fortnight. And yeah, after 10 days in Sante, I said, okay, I'm going to go up to Berlin, and then drove up to Berlin and stayed in a hostel for a couple of months, and then found a house. Always working with the team here, which is a couple called Gerardo and Evelyn who first initiated it. They were Me Premier Bitcoin teachers, and they, excuse me, really smart. To both of them, very enthusiastic, organized, and an ability to see into the future. And they said, yeah, Berlin was going to be the place they were going to focus on due to a lot of factors. I mean, there's a geothermal energy plant that produces a ton of Bitcoin, 274 Bitcoin mined in 2024, I believe. It's isolated enough. I mean, it's at the top of a volcano, 1,200 meters of height. It's got 3 roads leading up to it, so it'd be easy to
Is that
defend.
is that government owned or is that privately owned? Is do the government get that Bitcoin from the volcano? Yeah.
That's a good question. It was half privately owned before Bukele came in, and then he bought it.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, so it's all government owned. But I feel like he's treating this government as a bit of a business. I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie.
There's
It's
a way.
like, I don't know if you've read The Sovereign Individual, the book, or heard about the narrative of it, but I think
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, yeah.
he's treating it kind of like that, sort of.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey to watch from the outside. Now, it depends on where you listen to the news or what media you pick up, but he's been the dictator. He's been the evil capitalist that's just greedy and this and that. Like, what do you think of him, and what do the people there think of him? I know you mentioned safety and things like that. Like, are people for Bitcoin? Are they for him? Like, he's obviously got a high rating as well. I
Yeah,
think something like the highest rated
president, history,
president or something.
world.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
it true? Like, is this the way it's viewed?
I don't know if it's over 90% from just speaking to people. A lot of people give him shite because everyone's suffering from inflation. Obviously, like, minimum wage is 365 a month, and meals are $5, $6. So it's not that feasible. It's tough for a lot of people, and it's tougher now than maybe it would have been economically back before Bukele, because of all of the monetary inflation. But people don't have that view that this is a global thing, but more like it's the government's fault. So a lot of people are kind of feeling that. Generally, he's brought in the idea of mining. A lot of people are kind of against that locally here, mining in El Salvador, which is funny. Like, it's the only country in the world that doesn't allow for the mining operations. I mean, actual like gold and silver. But I think yeah, like, push comes to shove, if people had to choose someone else to come into power, there would be no way someone who could come in. And the fact that you see so much criticism is actually a really, really good sign, because it means people can't criticize them, and they don't feel like they need to be silent. I think that's one of the biggest slippery slopes for any nation, right? Where you can't criticize anything. And I'm only noticing this now. I think it's quite a nuanced topic. These amendments, right? One thing I have grown to appreciate here is that the American Constitution. Being from Europe, you generally look at Americans as dumb. I like that. That's definitely a stereotype. And negatively, my mother was born in the United States. My grandfather was American from Montana, and my mom always had negative things to say about America. And I think it has to do with the military industrial complex. But the Constitution is a very interesting piece of paper, and I think um, the freedom of speech is something that takes a while to understand why it's so significant. But we're seeing that more and more now. Why that is. So in terms of Bukele, what I think of Bukele is, I think he's a legend. I think he's an absolute legend. I think he's ahead of the game, and he's a proper Bitcoiner. And I think he's just playing his cards the way he has them. He only got a certain amount of resources. I think he has good intentions. I think he has his citizens' lives in mind, and I would, I would be strongly for him staying in power for as long as possible. I don't know. It sounds
Yeah.
crazy. I don't know.
It appears like he's coming from a place where he really wants to help. He's obviously transformed the country so quickly. Like from an outsider looking in, it's amazing how quickly the country has transformed. As you say, it's one of the most peaceful places now compared to what it used to be like. But when it comes to where you're located, Charlie, locally, do you find like the actual adoption of Bitcoin, is it coming from like educational resources from the likes of yourself and what people are doing in the local area filtering through to businesses, or is it the general kind of population hearing about it, using it, adopting it, or are these sort of like micro economies being set up in certain areas, circular Bitcoin economies? How do you find the adoption is actually spreading within El Salvador itself generally?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Ireland is blessed to have an extremely educated population. Like we have a really good, I find, an education system, and there is there's also the ability to work and to have a bit of time on your hands because you can save a little bit in Ireland and you have something left over at the end of the month. But when people are living day to day and people have, limited education level, the ability to question things or to be able to analyze things and make logical deductions reduces significantly. And that's why I think there's so many Bitcoiners in Ireland, because we have this ability to analyze and look at things, and um, we have, decent enough wage relative to expenses. In El Salvador, it's mainly up to the initiatives. I mean, there's definitely a few people who are, have a decent job, well off, and are intellectually curious and are looking into it because it's the legal tender of the currency. But the most people don't have the time of day to be looking into monetary history. Like they just don't. They want to figure out how they can put food on the table, make money quickly, get to the United States to earn more money, get a girlfriend, find a husband, go to church, read the Bible. Like there's just so many different things that people are paying attention to that Bitcoin just doesn't seem to be the one. And the fact that the US dollar is implemented, the debasement isn't as much as other countries. I was just in Suriname, and that was, it's depreciated against the dollar 80% in 3 years. It's just completely different ballgame. So it's really up to the individual initiatives like Premier Bitcoin, like, Berlin here. There's some government initiatives like Node Nation and Kubo Plus that is actually doing real things. They are. I've met a lot of the graduates from Kubo Plus, and I've seen them go from students of code to now leading in the industry, and really helping adoption and really going into the schools and giving really good classes. I mean, I gave a class to 80 students down in Usulutan, about 1 hour from here, and they're all paying attention. They're all understanding the difficulty adjustment. They're learning about, limited amounts of nature, the effects of inflation on society. And this is being taught in schools, Um, it's very, very, admirable, and it gives you a ton of hope for the country when you have the youth being taught this.
Yeah. Is that part of the curriculum then, like nationwide, or is it select schools? Like, is this everyone gets this and else?
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I mean, for it to be in the curriculum, the teachers themselves have to understand what it is, and that's the first step. So right now, the teachers are getting taught, like over 600 teachers. They're getting taught by a combination of Me Premier Bitcoin and the Bitcoin office, and yeah, there's been tons of classes done across in different schools already, technical education, but also broader education. Me Premier Bitcoin has done graduations, like they've done, tens of thousands of students, and it's going to be implemented into the curriculum in the next year or two. Like the second and third grade students have the little hodler book. They go through that. So it is being ingrained. Like the truth of the matter is the Bitcoin office, being led by Stacey, has a huge weight in the country. It's a small country. It doesn't have a massive GDP, and being able to have, Max and Stacy to come here and focus all their energy on improving the country is a blessing as well. So they're given a lot of room to grow or room to do stuff. It's being taught in the schools. I think the fruits of all of this will be seen maybe in 6, 7, 8 years time when all of these people start entering the workforce and decide to save in Bitcoin. And people holding their own keys, I think, is a really important aspect as well, because even here in Berlin, I'd say there's well over 1,000, 2,000, maybe 3,000 people who have a Lightning wallet on their phone, right? So people have interacted with Satoshis. They've seen the price move up and down. They've encountered the name a bit. They've seen the symbol dotted around their town. They've seen it in the square. They've seen it, Bitcoin Center bang in the center. All of these new tourists coming in. What the hell are they doing in Berlin? Why are they living here? The big events are thrown here. I've organized with Jethro, an American, a conference here where hundreds of people come through. We've had, after adopting Bitcoin, another couple of hundred Bitcoiners moving through. That brings in a lot of Bitcoin, and these Bitcoiners really, really want Bitcoin adoption as well. So they're going to all of these shops. They're reaffirming everything that we've already said to the merchants. They feel included in the project. Everyone's open to it. Everyone's still analyzes it for themselves, but they use it as a tool. It means it's just silly for a merchant not to accept Bitcoin now. But a lot of them are using Blink, which is a custodial wallet. And ultimately, if the 6 key holders end up wanting to run away with the funds, then that's a huge impact in Berlin if you aggregate it up. So I think getting people onto the 12 words will be, I think that's the focus for this year. Mainly, I think the robustness of an economy of any town and city is directly proportional to the amount of key holders in that place. Also bringing in the factor of amount of Bitcoin. I think there's definitely an equation there. And that's what I want. I want to be able to see how robust Berlin can get economically, independent from the central government, independent from other places, and then start increasing the trade routes between Bitcoin circular economies. So basically trading goods and services for sats. And once the state issued currencies start debasing at a quicker rate, which is inevitable, then trade routes will start to break down. The security that is involved in protecting trade routes across the globe will start to not have enough security behind them. There'll be a lot more pirates and people intercepting, I believe, because it's all run on debt, really, and insurance. So having strong Bitcoin trade routes and I think strong security between Bitcoiners and Bitcoin circular economies and Bitcoin nations is going to be key. And that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm really thinking that setting up a defense network for Bitcoin. Physical defense network might have to be thought of soon enough as well. But it's happening.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's kind of the way you're putting it is there's a lot of Bitcoiners in Ireland, and it's easy for us to get understand it because of education, maybe analytical background, critical thinker, and stuff like that. But I still feel like somewhere like El Salvador is miles ahead of Ireland in ways. I think, on the ground level, people might get it quicker, but I would say the adoption curve might be a lot slower in Ireland than you think. Now, we started this business, and we've interacted with a lot more Bitcoiners than we thought was here, and there's a bigger network, which is great to see. Because I was kind of the opinion that we're miles behind, maybe because what we're seeing in El Salvador, what you're seeing in the US at the minute, and maybe some other European countries like Czech Republic, and it seemed like Ireland, UK was miles behind. But like for you, it sounds like it's a mission driven aspect for you, and you want to keep at this until you get El Salvador to a certain level. I think it will reach there, naturally before, because of all the education and what you're outlining here. Like, is it a mission for you to get it to a certain point, and then would you Like I know nobody can predict the future, and everybody's got a plan until something else changes. But
Which is
would you consider going somewhere else then? Is there another, area of the world that you would live in? And maybe a bit of twist on this question, like what would it take to come back to Ireland? What needs to change in this part of the world for you to, to move back and maybe bring that education back here and experience back here?
that give me the shivers there, Chris.
Deep question.
It's really, really important, and sometimes you can get you can have the blinkers on when you're so focused on this money and trying to spread the word that you do forget the homeland and the family. My whole family are in Ireland, extensive, and I do reflect on this quite regularly. I don't know really. I don't. Well, yeah, I've thought about this quite a lot. I just think that it needs to go through a cleansing or something, and I don't know what that looks like. But I do think that people need to have a reality check because it's so propped up on Ireland itself. I'm talking about it's so propped up on this debt, and like you just look at the GDP per capita, and that's testament of. I know it's like distorted, but I feel like that distortion is representative of like what's happening in Ireland and people's view of things. It's kind of distorted because of all this fiat that's being pummeled through it. So I would really, really, what would we need? A stronghold of Bitcoiner. I think the GA clubs need to integrate Bitcoin. Maybe that's what needs to happen. Something like that. You have to think about like what brings what is the identity, Irish identity, and I find that clubs and sport always brings people together. And meetups, like if you look at Germany and how they've managed to spread out their Bitcoin meetup network through 21. I don't know if you've looked into it, but it's huge. Like, and they move in droves across the world, like an army, and that is powerful. So I think developing the meetup space and decentralizing it in a way that you can pick up a meetup wherever you have. This is the framework, um, and also big producers. Like if you start seeing farmers being able to sell their produce for Bitcoin, it's just the amount of subsidies that are being given to farmers and stuff like that as well. Just really disincentivizes them to take on Bitcoin. But yeah, I'd like to change supplies to. I'll eventually be going back to Ireland by hook or by crook and having to do it. But I just feel like the current politicians, the current something bad doesn't need to happen, but like there needs to be a bit of a crash and people to come to the realization that all of this money isn't, what everyone thought it was, and it happened in 2008, and I'm sure something similar will happen. But I want to, yeah, excuse that noise, but I want to be able to see that people are more open to it. The reason why I came to El Salvador was because I knew people would be open to the idea of sorry, that noise just keep on going. Can you hear that? Yeah, very clearly.
It's not loud, but yeah, I can hear it.
It's fine. It's just yeah.
That's the electrical grid in El Salvador for you. That's the UPS. So yeah.
So you think it's going? You would like to see more of a grassroots movement, really, and Bitcoin, like, but that would be the opposite then of what happened in El Salvador, where like I don't see it happening. Like, there's Bukele is not going to pop up, or Irish Bukele is going to pop up in Ireland. Like, I agree, and this is what we're trying to do as well. Like this grassroots movement, I think, and I asked this question kind of often, and you already answered it. Like, I it might take pain for people to actually wake up and realize Bitcoin. I know, and Rich as well, Bitcoin Network Ireland guys, they're approaching politicians, and I think that's the right thing to do as well. But my preference is always to see the grassroots movement. Like people get it from the ground up. But it might take, that celebrity, that politician, that someone to push it on. But I don't think we're going to get the Bukele style. Maybe even what Trump's doing is influencing America a lot. I just don't see it happening in Ireland. I think you're right. I think it's going to take local level adoption.
Um, yeah, I've with regards to other places from El Salvador, I was just in Suriname for 9 days. I don't know if you're aware of Maya Parbo, who's the presidential candidate.
Yeah.
I was organizing the conference Adopting Bitcoin there in November and managed to get to meet Maya. And she, I said I could help out with education over there. So I went over and checked it out and worked with the team there and set up a few systems. And I find that, this place definitely needs Bitcoin. And I think they're much more open to it. I think people are, all of the merchants accept euros and dollars and whatnot. Do you think you can edit this video? Because I'm going to try and turn off that noise for you guys.
Yeah, we can, certainly. Alan's a guru at this.
You're throwing that guru word around a lot, Chris.
Yeah, well, they can do a thing or two with videos.
Just press a few buttons.
Yeah, I can't even hear it now.
No, it's not that loud, anyways.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think so, but it doesn't come across. It's all fine. But yeah, it was interesting too, like what Freddie was saying in the last episode too, about approaching even local councillors and council kind of representatives, more of a local level. They'd be more receptive to certain, people approaching from the local scenes, which would be.
You are waiting some Bitcoin god like figure to come along, like, and it doesn't happen. Like, how many countries in the world? 190 odd, and there's only really maybe 3 or 4 people at the top of the political sphere in each of those countries. Maybe more than that, but like we've seen the guy in Czech Republic. We've seen Trump obviously talk about it, but they're not really drivers. Like Bukele is the only one really that's been
that's standing.
That's got it, fully got it, and been able to implement
that. But again, that's the key thing. Like, how come he can get it and he got it so quickly? Is it the age bracket he's in? Like, he's a young enough guy. What age is Bukele?
I think he's mid-30s, if even.
What age is Bukele? Sorry, we're just having a chat here.
I think he's mid-30s.
Yeah, mid to late 30s.
Yeah,
I think everything would. Do you think it's all right? Do you think it'll be?
Oh yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, it's grand. Don't worry, it's grand, Charlie. No, sorry, we were just wondering what age Bukele's. What, mid-30s, late 30s currently?
I think 40s.
Is he 40s?
Yeah. But that's not going to happen in Ireland. That's what I mean. And not that it's not going to happen, but the chances of it happening is slim. And mainly because there's a certain way of thinking here, and I think there's a lot of trust in governments and central authorities that you need somebody that's molded differently to reshape things. And yeah, it's phenomenal what's happening there, and in El Salvador altogether. It's been amazing to watch from the outside, and yeah,
inspiring as well. Very inspiring.
Maybe a couple of like if we communes. I don't know if I'm trying to think in Ireland what could be done. There's a lot of during COVID, a lot of little groups got set up in West Cork and different remote areas where they felt they could set up communities. If they started using Bitcoin, maybe. And having strongholds. I really do think circular economies is important and people using it for goods and services.
Yeah.
From my own experience, I think it evolves your understanding of what Bitcoin is when you start using it for those things, and then putting it into contracts and starting to denominate your goods and services in sats and stuff. So I do think, I think farmers markets where people start accepting their goods and services through Bitcoin would be really good. If they're still around or whatever. But I think things probably do have to get a bit more difficult. My goal here is to learn about how to increase adoption and then to be able to bring it back ultimately. I think that would be brilliant. I think
amazing. So that was kind of the final question then. Like what you mentioned, working with merchants out there at the moment. What's next for Charlie and Berlin? Like when you say you will, we're not expecting a date off you when you move back, Charlie. But what's next for you? Do you find is this still multi-year long in El Salvador for you?
I want to be able to get the passport because I don't know what's going to happen in Europe. I want to have that ability to be in another continent just for optionality, and that takes another 4 years. So I'll be here for another 4 years, anyways, and I'd say no, I'll be back up for summer there, talk to everyone. But I think working also remotely for, like, first of all, I'd be thinking about my family business, the businesses within my family, and integrating Bitcoin into that, and then actually going over and doing something locally. Yeah, I haven't lived that many years, except for secondary school and a bit of university, in my town in Galway, let's say. So it's that strong emotional connection isn't as it's not as present for me, but I have such a deep love for the people that I probably take a more um top down sort of. I think it's a definitely a work of both bottom up and top down. But if I was going to try and impact Ireland, I'd probably be on, like, the messaging side, being able to broadcast a message to the population rather than focusing in on a particular town. That's my current state. That could change completely, and that's just the reality. I grew up a lot in Spain, and there's a small town where I have a strong cohort of friends. It's called Algorfa. There's like maybe 10,000 people, and I'd really want to integrate it into there. But talking to some good friends who are now becoming Bitcoiners from that town, they're like, that's impossible. Like, they're saying, no way, no, people are sleeping on they're resting on their laurels there, and it's just not that pressing. But you know, things change so much. You can't predict it, and events allow you to change the way you see things, and um, there's a great strength in Ireland. There's some great independence in Ireland, as you can see from hundreds and hundreds of years of being able to stay different from the English. And I think that is extremely something that will probably allow for humanity push through for the next couple of decades. I think it's up to the Irish to arm themselves with knowledge, and be able to speak about it, and develop our understanding and our ability to conceptualize and communicate it, so that a larger number of types of people can understand the message, and really take it to heart. Uh, there's a strong link in Ireland between other Irish, and you can see that as you travel across the world. We're really strong. I've got some really good Irish friends who've moved to El Salvador, building a hostel down by the beach. I'm invested a little bit in it, but I'm always with them every 2 weeks for a few days. They're big Bitcoiners now, and they have the huge reach in Ireland as well. So I have a lot of faith. And I think it's up to the youth to really see it for what it is, and it's up to us to communicate it to the youth. I don't know if I'm youth anymore or not, but that's yeah. I think we have it in us. We just doing things like you guys, what you're doing with Emerge21. Absolutely. I think it's amazing. I think it's super important, and I think you go through a lot of time without reward, or without feedback of what you're doing. But I think it's extremely, extremely important for the future of the country of Ireland, for the youth. And Chris, I'm sure having a child has really changed your perspective on things, and probably your view of where you are and how important it is to curate that environment.
Yeah.
So
That's part of the drive as well. Charlie, like, you're leaving a world behind, for future generations, and there's nothing more than I feel like I was going to say want, but need to happen, is to live in a world with sound money, because yeah, everything else is broken without sound money. So yeah, no, that was interesting, Charlie, and great key messages at the end as well. I do hope to get over to El Salvador. If you're going to be there for the next 4 years, I would hope to come over at least once during that time as well. So yeah, great catching up with you, great hanging out with you. And any key messages, anything you want to drop about your businesses, or anything that you're working on at the moment, or where can people find you?
sound, Chris. Also a pleasure to be on here and chatting through. and a lot of respect to both of you lads. We are just starting up. I've been helping clients out with getting their funds into Bitcoin and securing their Bitcoin properly since I've been here. But now we're taking it, taking it official. The company is Shelling Point, and I'm starting it with a friend here. He's Quentin. He's a Frenchman who's the general manager for Me Premier Bitcoin at the helm, and our focus is to be able to help people move their money into Bitcoin, secure it properly, and also integrate it into your business and allow yourself to become more independent and have the ability to move. So as we go through turbulent times and uncertain times, having your Bitcoin off of your exchange and in areas that are accessible, and also having your Bitcoin allocated for certain functions is going to be increasingly important. We are there to be able to walk you through it, do a 45-minute session for free just to see what your situation is in a strategy session. And then we could do maybe 3, 4, 5 calls where we set out a plan to really allow you to become more sovereign and feel more comfortable and be able to sleep better at night and have a greater confidence in providing for yourself and for your family. Shelling Point is the name of the company. We aim to grow to serve people in Ireland, people across Europe, to be able to have the ability to move around and not feel like they're stuck or not feel like the world is ending and they have nothing that they can do.
Yeah, excellent, awesome. Things are happening in Bitcoin all over, so yeah, the more ventures like this, the quicker it's all going to happen. Alan, anything for you for Charlie? Any other last questions?
No, just thoroughly enjoyed it. I just sat back and listened. Just amazing conversation. Just hearing your journey, Charlie, and just everything is happening in El Salvador. You sit back, you see things coming on Twitter, on TV, but when you're talking to somebody who's actually there on the ground and doing what you're doing, it's really it's inspiring to see, and it's needed, as you say, it's needed across the globe, and it's kind of obviously what we're trying to do in our small way here, currently starting Emerge21 in Ireland and UK specifically. But we're trying to expand this beyond that. But it's really, I think we all need that, like Bitcoiners across the globe, doing as much as we can to increase adoption. And me as a business owner, just hearing what's happening with merchants, I truly think, merchant adoption, even here in Ireland, like I've had conversations with other business owners who are open to learning more about Bitcoin, but it comes from that educational point of view. So again, hopefully what we're doing, tying that into the merchant side here in Ireland and the UK and beyond, will help increase adoption in some way as well. So really great chatting to you, Charlie. Thanks for coming on this evening, and it was just a pleasure to hear what you're doing.
Yeah, great hanging out. Thanks for that, Charlie. We'll have you on again, I'm sure, sometime in the future and recap the journey over the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
All right. Cheers. Thanks.
Easy. Cheers, man. Thank you.